Hi, this is Dr. Mercola with Will Harris in Bluffton, Georgia at Oak Pastures, and he's a pioneer of grass-fed products and pastured farms. So we're here to take a look around.
Well, thank you for being here today, Dr. Mercola. I'm looking forward to showing you my farm. We are very, very proud, fiercely proud of what we do. We've come a long way with what I call a kinder and gentler agriculture. And we need the support of you and your viewers and supporters, and I want to show you what we got and try to earn that.
Well, great. I'm glad to be here, and we got a wonderful day to explore your farm.
Beautiful day.
We're now at a section of land that is a really great demonstration of the process of converting the traditionally grown land, which is typically growing corn, cotton, and peanuts, and literally decimates the soil because they not only do they monocrop this, but they use the chemicals, and none of this process allows organic matter to accumulate in the soil. And typically, in this land specifically, it's about 0.5%. And what Will did is just bought this land a few weeks ago. This is brand new fence he just put up, and he's in the process of using regenerative agricultural principles to convert it and increase the organic matter to 5, 6, 7% or even higher. So Will, why don't you discuss the process and let our viewers know how you're achieving this transition.
Thank you, Dr. Mercola. We are really feel blessed to have gained control of this piece of property. It's contiguous to the farm that my family has farmed for 150 years. This land has been farmed in what I call the southern trifecta, cotton, corn, peanuts, over and over again. All three crops are really hard on land for different reasons. This soil is, in my mind, completely dead. The biological life just doesn't exist here anymore because of intense tillage, a tremendous amount of chemical fertilizers being used on it, as well as pesticides. What we've done is, and this was cotton last year, what we've done is fenced the property. We put about 1,000 cows on the land, and there's nothing for them to eat out here. We feed them hay and haylage during the period that we're asking them to transition this land for us. They'll be out here for about a month.
How many acres are out here?
There's 220 acres.
Okay.
They will be eating hay that is imported from another farm about 5 miles from here. They will urinate and defecate on the land, basically just giving the microbes something to eat, nourishing the microbes, nourishing the land. So I let them do that for about 3 weeks. This past Monday, I flew on 15 pounds of perennial grass seed, and I'll leave the cows out here for another week, letting them walk it in. In addition to feeding the land through urine and feces, their hoof activity helps break down the hard cap on the land. We call this using animal impact to bring about the desired result, which is ultimately to turn this into a pasture and then later to turn it into a savanna, which we feel best utilizes the radiation energy cycle, the water cycle, and the mineral cycle.
Yeah, and it'll create land that will actually grow nutrient-dense foods that will sustain human populations, because forests won't do that.
Yes, sir. That's right.
Yeah. So you've got 220 acres here, and you've got the general principles. You've got the cows essentially trampling over and depositing their waste throughout the field. But how do you get them to go actually go over the entire 220 acres? I mean, what's the strategy? How do you manipulate them to do that?
That's a good question. It's very important that the animals traverse the property. And these cattle are like us. They're really not going to do much more walking than they need to do. So we put the haylage on this end of the property, and the water is on the other end of the property. So that does two things for us. One is it maximizes the impact of their hooves on the land, which we want, and it causes them to not concentrate the waste, the urine and the feces in one place, but to distribute it as evenly as it can across the land.
Do you change the water location so that
We change the feed location.
Feed
the
location.
water location
Is
is very
fixed.
difficult to change,
Okay.
but we move the feed around,
Okay.
causing them to take different paths.
Okay.
I'll also mention that you see how you can see through that little forest right there?
Sure.
That land was so thick that you couldn't get through it without a machete. In fact, when we built the fence, we had to chop our way through. The animals now have opened it up, and that too will become a source of feed for the cattle. You know, cattle like us don't want, their bodies don't want a monoculture of eating only the same grass or forbs over and over and over. You want that
Variety.
smorgasbord
Sure.
of like nature intended. You know, nature abhors a monoculture. Yeah, nature won't allow it. In nature, you
But that's almost the entire composition of industrial agriculture.
that's
It's
factory
monoculture.
farming.
Yeah.
Industrial factory farming is monocultural. You know, in nature, you will never have some woods that are nothing but white oak trees, and some woods that are nothing but longleaf pines, and there are nothing but squirrels in those
Or
woods.
pecans.
Or pecans. There's nothing but deer in those woods. Nature wants a smorgasbord of many different microbes and plants and animals living in symbiotic relationships with each other. And the only way we can maintain a monoculture is through the use of the tools that reductionist science has given us. Chemical fertilizers, pesticides, antibiotics, hormones. The monoculture falls apart if you don't use those things. And they have unintended consequences.
Basically violating time-honored natural principles that will decimate the topsoil and the microbes and lower the organic content, which is what's really crucial to sustain this nutrient-dense ability to produce nutrient-dense foods. So this is the process of converting back the damage that all the industrial agriculture and factory farming has done for literally hundreds of years. I mean, in your case alone, your family has owned this farm for 150 years. And you know, they've done a lot of damage to it, but you know, you're helping repair it.
Well, industrial farming has horrible unintended consequences, and it is absolutely in conflict with nature. What we do here is an effort to emulate nature, and our best emulation is not good, and our worst emulation is horrible.
Yeah.
But we get better and better at it.
With time, sure. And it's interesting because your family's been here for many generations, 150 years, yet still there's members of your family that don't get this. They don't understand or adopt this for whatever reason. We look at the land on the other side and it's, you know, basically that's going to continue in the degenerative cycle where this is going to progress into the regenerative cycle.
You know, I know every farmer in this part of the country. I'm 61, I was raised here, but my family's been here 150 years. I know everybody. And there's not a single one of them that believes they're degrading their land. And there's not a single one of them that believes their animal welfare is not fine.
Okay, well, the average person watching this won't understand what animal welfare is. I mean, they know what the words mean, but can you broaden that description so they have a deeper appreciation of what that means?
Absolutely. So for me and my father, and for my neighbors still, good animal welfare meant that you don't intentionally inflict pain and discomfort on the animal. You keep them fed, you keep them safe, you don't hurt them. And all of us believed that was good animal welfare, and most people still believe that. To us now, that is no longer sufficient. For me and my family and my employees, good animal welfare means that it is incumbent upon us as herdsmen to create an environment in which the animal can express instinctive behavior. You know, cows were born to roam and graze, chickens were born to scratch and peck, hogs were born to root and wallow, And those are instinctive behaviors, and if they're deprived that opportunity, that is poor animal welfare. If you have a cow in a feedlot, a hog in a gestation crate, a chicken in a battery cage, they're safe, they're reasonably comfortable, but they can't express instinctive behavior. It's like raising your child
in a prison.
Put them in a closet,
Yeah.
and saying, this is great. I keep it 72 degrees in there. I leave the light on. He'll never break his leg playing football. He'll never be abducted. He won't get run over by a bus. Great.
And you give him food to eat.
Give him good food.
That he was never designed to eat.
Give him potato chips.
Potato chips
the
and
Cheetos,
Twinkies.
and Cheetos
Yeah.
and soft drinks he wants. That seems like great child rearing.
Yeah.
Except it's not.
Yeah.
You need to let them get out there on the football field and eat meat and vegetables and be exposed to microbes where they won't become allergic and they'll build up natural immunity. That might be a good idea.
Likely is. All right, well, thank you for expanding on that.
Thank you for coming.
Now we're into the next phase of the transition in regenerative agriculture. The first plot of land we showed you was just a few weeks old. This is a few months old, and you can already begin to see the dramatic and remarkable transition. So why don't you describe what's going on here and how this got to this stage, and then how some of the annuals are going to be managed by your wise introduction of the cows.
So this land also has been farmed, cotton, peanuts, corn, rotated over and over and over till the soil is literally dead. We just got this land at the same time. It's part of the 220 acres actually. We've used the animal impact. I put cattle out here, fed them haylage. They walked and broke the hard pan on the top of the soil. Got rid of, they put a lot of feces and urine down to feed the land. Let them do that for about 3 weeks. Then we flew on perennial grass seed, 15 pounds an acre of a mix, and pulled the cattle, let them walk it in good, then we pulled the cattle off. And this is, I don't know if you can see it, it's so fine. We have a wonderful stand of the perennial grasses coming. It looks like tiny green hair. And that's what's going to make this into a productive pasture and later savanna.
Because they'll lay down really long tap roots going down a number of feet.
8 feet.
Yeah.
8 feet.
As opposed to the annual. So that's going to really nourish the microbiome and the bacteria and other organisms that live and thrive in the soil. They need that plant interaction.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The annuals that you see here, and there are a lot of them coming.
The bigger ones.
Oh, the big ones. That's like the quick kick.
Right.
They jump up. They're shallow rooted, and they're fine, but they're not the long-term solution for regenerative agriculture. And in fact, they will outcompete this very delicate, fragile perennial grass we got coming. So we'll use the animal impact to handle that. We'll put, when we get a little bit better stand of perennial grass, the annuals will be more pervasive. We'll put the cattle in here, and I call it flash grazing, let them bite everything off. And they'll concentrate on the annuals because they're big and succulent. But before they get to the little tender perennials, we'll pull them off.
And that's just not very long, maybe an hour.
Maybe an hour or two, yeah. Because we put 1,000 head on here, and it's only 26 acres, I think, in this pasture. So, but we'll have to do that a number of times because the annuals again
will come up.
And we'll keep doing that this year and maybe next year, but until
the
by
perennials
then,
root and get hold.
That's
Take
right.
a nice stand, so they can compete effectively with the annuals.
when they get that root down 6-8 feet, then they can they'll outcompete the annuals.
Great. It's a magnificent to see this whole process in transition, because this is slow. You have to understand how the cycle works so that you can manage it properly, and you can recapture and regain the soil through the regenerative agricultural principles. But if you don't, it's not going to happen spontaneously. And you can wisely manipulate and facilitate and catalyze the quickening up of the conversion, because typically to regain topsoil, I think it's 100 to 1,000 years to regain like an inch quarter inch of topsoil. It's a very slow natural process. But when you use these principles, you can accelerate it by thousands of times. You can get how much topsoil can you grow?
You know, I don't know about depth. As far as a percentage organic matter, which would be a good indicator, we've gone from less than 0.5%, which is what this would be. I've done it on other farms, to as much as 5% in about a 20-year period.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the cycle, and that's right, but it's really so complex. It is cycles. You know, you've got the energy cycle with the sun. You know, the goal is to have as much photosynthesizing material as possible. When that sunshine sends that radiation and hits that bare earth, it's lost. If it hits photosynthesizing tissue, like a good stand of grass and trees, you know, it's turned into a usable product. Grass for the cows.
Because this is the last thing you want is bare soil. As Gabe Brown teaches them, the plants are the armor of the soil. You always want to cover it. You don't want to keep it bare because then you decimate the microbes of the soil.
It's like your skin.
Yeah.
And also the mineral cycle. You know, this photosynthesizing tissue is breathing in carbon dioxide, sequestering it in the ground, and breathing out oxygen, which we need. So it's a cure for greenhouse gases.
Yeah, you'll sequester the carbon.
Yeah.
But the reason the soil's not covered now because it's in transition. It's beginning to be covered, and you get this fine green growth of the perennials that will be coming in and eventually cover the entire soil.
Yeah, we're crawling before we walk, walking before we run. I'll show you some other stands that are doing exactly what they're supposed to do with the water cycle, the solar cycle, and the mineral cycle.
Yeah, that are benefiting from adopting these principles.
I mentioned the water cycle, but I didn't. You know, so the water cycle is we get about 52 or 3 inches of rain every year. If that rain falls on this land, it's like falling on a tabletop. After this has got a good growing sod on it, it's like a sponge. So it's
because the more organic matter, the more water that the soil will retain.
Yeah, every drop of water that hits the earth is dying to get to the ocean. And it's my job as a land steward to slow it down.
Absolutely. All right. Okay, here we are in a mature pasture. This is what the ultimate progress of the pasture goes to, and this specific pasture has not had any chemical fertilizer on it or herbicides for 10 years. So why don't you explain what we're looking at in the process to get here, because it's quite a bit stark contrast from the raw land that we saw on the earlier clips.
It's a stark contrast. We talk about the carrying capacity of the land as an indication of productivity. And this land could easily carry 1 mama cow per acre, which is very, very productive. When I look down, I see many, many, many different species of grass and forbs. I see red clover, white clover, Bahia grass, Bermuda grass, ryegrass, Dallas grass, just a smorgasbord, many, many things for the cattle to eat. This pasture was grazed off pretty short about 3.5 weeks ago.
Wow, it grew back this quick at 3.5 weeks.
It did. You know, actually the grass is getting ahead of the cattle. These cattle aren't through with this pasture, and they actually need to be moved over there and then over here. So this is a very productive time of year, and I'm probably going to bring some other animals, sheep or goats, over here to help them with it, to catch up a little bit.
Okay, perfect. So this proceeds throughout the entire year, of course, and obviously in the winter it's not going to grow as lush. So do you ever have to resort to the need for hay in the winter when you don't have the lush pasture that you do in the summer?
We actually, the answer is yes. We do use hay or haylage when the grass is not growing as quickly as we need it to. I said it's growing too quickly now. There are times that it's not
growing enough.
It's usually not in the winter.
Okay.
We're about 70 miles from the Gulf of Mexico.
Okay.
So we get warm weather, good rains, no snow. So our winter grass is very good. Our main reason for feeding supplemental hay or haylage is in the between the warm season grass and the cool season grass, there's a little bit of a lull.
Oh,
And then between the cool season and the warm season, there's a little bit of a lull. So we feed haylage then. There'll be still something green growing, it's just not growing quick enough. And then if we have a little, what we call a drought, not what they would call a drought in most of this country, but we feed haylage.
and you know, as long as you're here in this lush pasture, I think it might be wise to address some of the economic challenges that prevent other farmers from taking the course that you did, which was really courageous and I'm still not clear I understand your entire motivation for doing it, but it clearly is not doing it. It's a long-term strategy, because the transition to engage in this type of rational, sustainable, regenerative agricultural approach is you're going to take an economic impact. Because the investment of time, effort, energy, and resources to create this environment is you're not going. There's a long time where you're not going to be able to sustain an economic benefit from that, because it takes a while for it to mature. So maybe you can discuss some of those reasons, because I think it'll help our viewers understand some of the challenges that a conventional farmer might have, and maybe even might motivate some conventional farmers.
So having good animals that fit the land, healthy, immune to what pathogens might be here, productive, efficient animals, grazing on land like this is profitable. It's
at this stage,
at this
level.
stage.
But it's taken a while to get there. You don't get here in a year or two.
Oh no, correct. But at this point, right here, if everything looked like this, it would be very lucrative and profitable and productive, and all is good. Unfortunately, here in my part of the world, and I think it's probably true throughout the world, industrial agricultural practices have degraded the land dramatically. This land, beneath this grass, is a organic medium that's teeming with life. It's just full of living things, millions of living things, some of which you can see, most of which you cannot see, but it's teeming with life. If you go right across that forest to another field that belongs to another landowner and got a handful of that soil, it is a dead mineral medium. It's like a handful of tiny, tiny glass beads, and nothing is living there.
It's almost like growing in hydroponics.
It holds the roots in place. I've said that before. It's like hydroponic farming. You put everything there you want it to have, because there's nothing there.
Right.
So the transition from this to that is very expensive, very slow, and it requires a little bit of knowing what you're doing. And it's in steps, and if you were just dropped over there and told make a living grazing livestock, you couldn't do it. So what we do is we've got a lot of this land that is working for us, so we're able to add small bits every year and start transitioning it.
Subsidize that. So if you take a look at these animals, I mean, you've got a magnificent. These are really healthy animals, and what we had a conversation earlier, and I'd like you to comment on this and expand on it, is that because most people watching this aren't farmers, they don't know how long a cow lives for the most part. But a cow raised on this type of in this type of environment outside, eating this natural pasture, will live to over 20 years old. Healthy, without disease, without seeing the vet, without taking antibiotics, without taking vitamin supplements.
Exactly. Because they're eating a natural diet.
Right.
So these are the male calves that I raised last year. I think there's 360 something of them, and they are now about a year and a half old. Maybe not quite, just close to it, probably 17, 18 months old.
Okay.
Most of them, all of them, will be slaughtered on our farm. We have an on-farm slaughter plant. But between now, over the next 8 months, we'll slaughter all of them, except a few that we select for breeding. The ones we really like, we'll keep for breeding. But if we gave these animals a presidential pardon and said, we're not going to slaughter you, we're just going to let you stay right here, eating what you're eating, doing what you're doing, they would live the normal life expectancy of a cow, which is 20-something years. I think 24 years is what we're told is the average life expectancy.
Of a healthy cow.
Of a healthy
Fed
cow.
pasture.
If you took a feedlot animal, a feedlot animal, instead of being slaughtered at 22 months of age, they'd be slaughtered at 17 months of age. Instead of weighing 1,000 pounds, they would weigh 1,275 pounds. Instead of having 2/10 of an inch of back fat at the 12th rib, they would have almost 3/4 of an inch of back fat at the 12th rib. So what that's saying is that animal is an unnaturally obese creature, obscenely obese, that would never survive in nature, never occur in nature. If they were left beyond their 17 months in that feedlot environment where they're gaining 4 or 5 pounds a day, they wouldn't live very long. I've never done that experiment, but I'm sure they wouldn't live to be 4 years old. So that's the difference. When you eat one of these animals, you're eating a healthy animal in the prime of its life.
Yeah, they're like athletes almost.
Like athletes.
Yeah.
When you eat that feedlot animal, you're eating a obese creature that is dying of all the diseases of sedentary lifestyle and obesity that kill people.
Yeah, that's right. And you know, the analogy is quite extraordinary to what is happening to the traditional American diet.
Yeah.
You know, we're eating foods that are very similar to the feedlot cows, which die literally 75% more quickly than the cows fed in their natural environment.
And the example I gave of those 2 cows would be even more with 2 hogs, industrial versus pastured, and it would be even more with 2 chickens, industrial versus.
And that's largely because those animals don't live quite as long as the cows. Is that correct?
Well, it's because the smaller the animal, the more handedly it lends itself to industrialization, or factory farming.
Okay.
So the more intense the factory. You know, a cow in a factory farm does not have a great life.
Yeah.
A hog in a factory farm has a worse life. Now, I don't think there's no farm animal that has as bad a life as a chicken in a factory farm.
Yeah, that's extraordinary. And I think most people watching this probably aren't aware of that because we're isolated from that whole growing experience, and we have no idea of what the natural life expectancy of these animals are in the wild because we just don't know, because they're sacrificed so much more quickly than they would have normally.
And you know, every multinational food company calls itself something really pleasant. You know, Donnybrook Farm, and on the side of the trucks, they've all got a red barn and happy animals around it and a little brook flowing through the green pastures. So, you know, there's a lot of greenwashing that occurs.
Yeah. So it's really helpful that people like you are really a major pioneer in this, one of the primary leaders in the whole United States of actually implementing this strategy and teaching others to do this, and a lot of sort of leading the way so others can follow in your footsteps and really raise healthy food and have animal welfare as a primary side benefit, and still maintain a profit and bring economic prosperity to the local community that you're engaging in this effort.
Well, thank you, but it's almost in the reverse order. You know, I'm a land steward and a stockman, and I focus on the health and well-being of the land and the animals, and the good food that comes from that is almost like a byproduct.
Yeah.
But it's the byproduct that we need because consumers buy it and provide the money that allows us to continue to operate and expand in this way.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons your practices really address the primary objections that many people have to eating meat, which is the animals are raised inhumanely and they are loaded with chemicals, hormones, antibiotics, and other pesticides and residues that wind up getting in there, and they ingest that when they eat the meat. So if animals are raised in this way, it actually is going to contribute to your health in a profoundly important way, because there's nutrients that we need. We were designed, I believe we were designed to eat some form of animal protein. And the problem is that you just want to stay away from the industrial raised, factory farmed animals, and really take your selection from animals raised like this. It's going to be a little more costly, but if you understand that you don't need to eat a lot of meat, you know, if the average person eats 30, 40, 50, 60 grams a day, that's not a lot. You don't need an 8-ounce piece of steak. You need like a 2 or 3 ounce piece of steak for most of us. Maybe 4 ounces at the most. But you know, so you're eating less, the cost difference disappears.
Well, you raised two good points, and there's another one. You said that the reason people don't eat meat or refrain from eating meat is the animal welfare, and you're exactly right.
And I think it's a valid objection.
It is a very valid objection. Yeah. But our animal welfare is beyond reproach, and we could talk about that a long time.
Sure.
We don't just think animal welfare is not inflicting pain and discomfort. We think animal welfare is creating an environment in which they can express instinctive behavior, and it's a good life, whether it's a chicken, pig, cow, whatever. The second thing you said is the nutritional and health aspects, which is your field, and while I certainly believe what you said, it's not mine to talk about that.
Sure.
You know, that's not my expertise, but I believe it. But the third thing is that I think cause people to refrain from eating meat is their concern over animal impact to the environment. And I agree if you're talking about a confinement factory farm model. But I would suggest to you that animal impact is essential for turning this dead land back into productive farmland.
And you know, to address it, there's a recent documentary out that's gotten a lot of press. I believe it's Cowspiracy is the name of the documentary. I don't know if you've seen or heard of that.
I've heard of it.
Yeah. So what they claim in that, I think it was, I mean, there were well-intentioned researchers, but they just didn't do their homework, because their claim is that, contrary to what you said, this pasture will support 1 cow per acre. They claim you need 40 acres for 1 cow. They're off by a factor, by an enormous percentage, almost 2 orders of magnitude.
Well, I would agree, in Arizona, it might take 40 acres. Yeah. I don't know that.
Yeah.
But you know, the world that we live in, this environment, evolved through interaction between microbes, plants, animals, to create what we have here today. Now, I'm not talking about 100 years, I'm talking about millennia. To say that suddenly we can have a healthier environment by removing the animal impact that was here, you know, from the creation, evolution, making a impact on who we are, what we are,
seems a bit irrational.
It's people that don't understand what's true in nature. Those of us who live close to the land and the animals understand that it's ludicrous to say we'll have a world without animals.
Yeah, I'm just...
We did the same thing with microbes. You know, there was a time that, I guess maybe it's still true, people want to kill all the microbes in the world. You know, we live in a hermetically sealed...
Antibacterial soap and...
Yeah, a little squirt the stuff on everybody's hands. Well, you know, life as we know it cannot go on without microbes. And it's the same thing to say, let's just get rid of these animals and let's just keep a few and keep them in a zoo somewhere. Life can't go on like that.
Yeah, it's really saddens me that most people watching this have never had, and most likely never had the experience to witness this firsthand, because it really is truly extraordinary. It's an eye-opening experience. So if you ever do have an opportunity to go on a farm, a pastured farm like this, I would strongly encourage you to do, because it'll open your eyes, and it's really, it'll help you understand a deeper reality than you might have been exposed to previously. So we are here with the goats, and you may not realize, but one of the primary purposes of goats is they're magnificent herbivores, even more so than cows. They will really take the vegetation down to an extremely low level, and they can be used strategically to manicure a piece of property as an alternative to toxic herbicides. So Will's going to enlighten you how that process occurs.
Well, that's exactly right. The plant species that goats and sheep prefer are different from the ones cattle prefer. So we have virtually no weeds, maybe one, in our part of the world that either goats, sheep, or cows won't eat.
Mm-hmm.
So using the three in combination causes us to avoid using herbicides,
Mm-hmm.
other pesticides on the pastures. In the same way that you wouldn't have in this country before Europeans got here, you wouldn't just have deer. You would have deer and buffalo and other herbivores. The same is true that it doesn't do an efficient job of vegetation if you just have cattle or you just have sheep.
Mm-hmm. That's terrific. And there's even companies that have very large herds of goats and sheep that they rent out to large lots of land that they can use as an alternative to keeping the vegetation under control.
You're right. You know, in my part of the world, the land will go back to forest.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you do one of five things.
Okay.
Spray it with a pesticide, which has many, many problems.
Mm-hmm.
Till it, which leaves it open for erosion and requires fossil fuel. Burn it, which puts particulate matter up into the atmosphere. Mow it, which is fossil fuel and has other problems with regard to organic matter, or graze it.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, out of those five possibilities, the one that makes the most sense is to graze it.
Yeah, certainly it's the most biologically efficient, and recycles the whole process back so that you complete the cycle, and actually every phase is optimized. So that's a primary way that you contribute to the regenerative cycle and actually build up the soil rather than break it down.
That's exactly what I was going to say, the most environmentally regenerative of the five
Right.
as well.
Yeah, so it's a magnificent strategy. It's really challenging that more people aren't aware of this, and there's not more people like yourself. I mean, you're not the only one doing this. There's clearly many others, but it's clearly a minority. And you know, most of people or commercial ranchers have chosen the conventional approaches, which is really these toxic herbicides, to the point that they're really decimating the environment, decreasing the amount of carbon that's stored in the soil, and lowering the topsoil and the carbon content of the soil.
Yeah,
Organic content, sorry.
I'm 61 years old, and my generation never learned how to use animal impact
Mm-hmm.
to shape land. My father's generation was exposed to it, but they fell so deeply in love with internal combustion engines and the tools reductionist science gave us, like chemical fertilizers and pesticides, that they forgot about animal impact.
Mm-hmm.
So we're just now that my generation, or future generations, I guess, are learning of the unintended consequences of industrial farming, we're having to relearn how to use animal impact.
Yeah. I think that's really a profoundly important principle that many of us, it's not just for regenerative agriculture, but for so many other areas of life, is the law of unintended consequences. Mm-hmm. It appears that a superficial, simple, and cheap initial approach is the best way to go, but when that fails to acknowledge or have a deeper appreciation of the law of unintended consequences, which in the long term could be devastating, and it frequently is. And that's one of the reasons why we're so concerned about the widespread use of GMOs. Not because, just obviously from the genetic component, but also what it allows conventional farmers to do is to use these very toxic herbicides, which we have no idea of the safety, because the safety studies the realistic, true, authentic safety studies have never been done. So we're exposing the entire population to be a guinea pig in a giant experiment, which is just the most irrational approach possible, but yet that's what we've done.
I'm a student of, I'm a disciple of Alan Savory, the Savory Institute, and he teaches us how we use this land and these animals to maximize the energy cycle, the water cycle with rain, the carbon cycle, the mineral cycle, and animals are essential to that.
Yeah, Yeah, so it's, I'm glad you're leading the way in helping sort of pioneer in some innovations in this, but also teaching these principles to other farmers and showing that it's possible. Not only possible, but it's really the most efficient and practical way to produce regenerative practices, improve the soil, and provide high quality food for people, but also actually earn a decent income from it because you're able to generate more income than a conventional farmer would using these toxic approaches.
And more important than it's possible, I think, is it's scalable.
Yeah.
The response to farming in a manner that's more environmentally regenerative and compassionate for the animals, the response from multinational industrial ag is you can't feed the world like that.
Yeah, that's the classic response, you're right.
And I would argue, I think that we have shown here that it's scalable.
Yeah, in large areas, and you don't have to have these monocrop systems that conventional agriculture produces, which just is absolutely pushing this topsoil and the organic content of the soil in the wrong direction. So not only is it scalable, but it produces food that people want and they're willing to pay for. You know, food doesn't have to be dirt cheap. I mean, you can produce high quality food, and especially in using it in the right quantities, more as a condiment than rather than the sole source of the meal. And you've got a win-win-win for the environment, for the farmer that grows it, and also for the consumer who wants to consume it.
In Savory's book, I remember one page in which there are pictures of 6 different palatial ancient buildings that are in ruins, sitting out in the desert, like the pyramids and others. And the question he asks is, why did these ancient people build these palaces out in the desert? And the answer is, it wasn't desert. It was in the best, most productive land they had, but because of abuse, it became a desert.
Yeah, that's a point that many people don't appreciate. That we tend to, because we have a limited historical perspective, we tend to think of it as it's our generation or the previous generation that this conventional agriculture, and certainly in a large scale that's happened, but this has gone on from time immemorial. Historically, when there was loads of land, the farmers would just abuse the soil until the fertility was essentially depleted and then move on to the next piece of soil and let's repeat that practice. And eventually the soil fertility was evaporated and they couldn't grow anything there and it turned into a desert.
And the Green Revolution after World War II is when we had reductionist science gave us so many tools. They repurposed ammunition factories for chemical fertilizer. They repurposed nerve gas research for herbicides. GIs who had been working with horses and mules went to the European theater and came back knowing about internal combustion engines and tanks and trucks. It was like a perfect storm post-World War II. And having all those tools to work with caused the degradation ability to degrade to increase exponentially.
Yeah, and then so not only is that based on the historical precedence that this damage was already occurring over centuries, it catalyzed this exponential increase of the ability to destroy it. So thankfully people like you are providing an alternative that can actually repair and restore the soil and actually bring us back to a healthy recycle environment that builds up the soil.
Thank you.